Yeah, I mean, let's keep it for an hour and go with that. Last minute and then we'll start.
Sure. So I'll just pull up my slides. I'm going to be using a slideshow to help us navigate the conversation. But I'm hoping that this won't be a one-sided presentation.
I do see people joining in, but in the interest of time, let's get started. So
Cool.
I'll do a quick, short, brief introduction of Pooja, who is our guest speaker for the day, who is very kindly joined us for the first masterclass session for this year from Volunteer for India. So a quick word about the masterclass sessions. It's a space that Volunteer for India has curated over the last 2 years to initiate conversations on relevant social issues and different socially relevant themes, where experts from each field shares their wisdom with people who are interested to know more and to explore the social sector. And I think the theme for today is a very relevant one, and everyone, including myself, I'm looking forward to learning a lot through the course of this session today, Pooja. So Pooja is founder of the Sarvodaya Collective, and she's been working on. I mean, it's right there on the screen, but she's been working on creating an inclusive space, or inclusive Duniya, as she calls it, for the people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'll not go into a lengthy introduction. I'll let Pooja talk more about the work she does, and I'm sure she has a lot more very informative session planned for us. So right over to you, Pooja. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us today for this session. Over to you.
So much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me as well. Because as you introduced, we work towards the mission of building an inclusive Duniya, but the primary way we do this is by engaging volunteers in the cause. And we are building inclusive Duniya as a campaign for the cause. So I am very pleased to be talking to BFI volunteers today and other people who give their time and effort and energy and emotions to bringing about positive social change, because this is an issue we care about. And there's a bunch of us over here on the call from our team, and we are very happy to see you here. Thank you. So a quick dipstick before we begin. I am assuming in terms of language, we're okay with English, mix of Hindi, okay? Okay. Second question, and maybe you could give me a quick raise of hands over here. How many of us feel comfortable saying we understand the term neurodiversity? Okay. And you don't have to answer this, but maybe just think about this for a second. How many of us know someone who's neurodivergent in our real life, whether at work or college, school? Ishan does. And how many of us would identify as being neurodivergent? Just, you don't have to answer. Maybe something to reflect on before we get started with the session today. It would be great to know. It would be great to hear from you, because then it helps me sort of tailor the conversation. But if you'd really rather not, then that's okay. Does someone want to say something?
No, please continue. I
Okay.
just had the apprehension about the term. I don't.
Sorry, you're not audible, Ishan. Can't hear you. Okay, cool. Do type it in the message and I'll pick it up. So I was hoping we have about an hour over here. So it is not enough time to go into the depth of either the topic. It's a really broad, wide topic, but I hoped that I could share some foundational concepts and terms with you to familiarize you with the world of neurodiversity. Share a little bit about the work that we do and how we weave in volunteering, why we weave in volunteering as a way of driving the social change, and how we could engage, and of course we will share our details and we will share any follow-up materials so you could read up a little bit more and learn, and if you want an in-depth session, then we could do an in-depth session as well. So starting with the foundational concepts, I wanted to start off with this word cloud, like a bit of a terminology 101. So when we talk about the term neurodiversity is a term that's gaining currency right now. But if you're talking about the term neurodiversity, this broad word cloud is, other related terms that you might hear. There are some terms over here that I want to call out specifically as being archaic and ones that we do not like to use within the disability advocacy community. So special needs is something that a lot of people think is a kind way to refer to individuals with disabilities, but it is something that has definitely lost favor and is needs and needs, and they everyone has individual needs, and we do not like for them to be referred to as special needs. So we take a fact first approach to referring to disability, and that kind of recognizes the lived experience of an individual, but it also recognizes the fact of the matter. So we also use person first language, which is seen as more respectful. So it is a person with intellectual disability, it is a person with Down syndrome. So person first language is generally the preferred way to go. But if you're ever in doubt, ask the person. The other term that we do not use, and again has lost currency, is mental retardation. It is what used to refer to an IQ of less than 70, a condition that occurred with an IQ of less than 70. It is generally seen as disrespectful, and legally is the term that has been dropped both in the US and India, and is not a term that was ever used in the UK. So in summary, intellectual disability, mental retardation, learning disability refer to a condition where which occurs with an IQ of less than 70 and impacts one or two or more social adaptive skills. We do not use the term mental retardation in India. The preferred term is intellectual disability. Learning disability is a term that's used in the UK. And the point that I want to make with this and with the next one, where there are synonymous use of terms across different countries, is that different contexts have different preferred terms. But in our country, we use intellectual disability for the first condition and specific learning disabilities for the second condition. And then if you're kind of talking about in an educational context, there's SEN, there's IEP, and assistive technology, which refers to any device, software, or equipment that helps people gain greater function to live with their condition. The second terminology 101 that I wanted to share, and I picked up this slide from a training that we'd done with an education company, but I decided not to change this, is because I thought visually it conveyed what exclusion, segregation, integration, and inclusion look like very well. So it's only in that context, if you could look at those circles and the dots, where we really want to be and what we hope for is inclusive Duniya is the extreme right hand. We may be somewhere, depending on what sort of a context we occupy, we may be where individuals are excluded or segregated. And even if they're integrated, they're really truly not included, whether it's in a social setting or in an educational setting. So let's get on with the 1, 2, 3 of neurodiversity. It neurodiversity is a term that was coined by a lady called Judy Singer. It refers to normal changes and variations in the human brain cognition that impact sociability, learning, attention, mood, and other mental functions. When we, within Sarvodaya and Inclusive Duniya, when we talk about it, we include intellectual disability, Down syndrome, autism spectrum, ADHD, and SLD within the scope. But there are mental illnesses that also fall within the scope, which we do not focus on. So it's something that we will not talk about. So there is a broader definition, but we focus on the conditions listed in number 3. What is it that we really need to know when we talk about neurodiversity? What we need to know is that all brains are beautiful. The term recognizes that not all brains think or feel the same way, and that any differences should not be actually seen as deficits. So for example, and this is a question that I ask often in a lot of sessions, are there any twins here? Is there anyone here who has a twin brother or sister? Or even siblings? So the point that I wanted to make was that, we think we're kind of, born in a certain condition, a genetic makeup and certain conditioning, we would look at the world exactly the same, but we don't, because we're made up differently. And all brain differences really are, no matter what sort of experience you go through, even if you're sitting with somebody on the same bench for 12 years in a school, you would probably grow up looking at the world very, very differently. So all differences need to be respected, and knowing that, human bodies, and therefore, at the neural level, they're constructed differently, it needs to be seen as normal. But what we need to remember is that neurodivergent individuals may experience, interact with, and interpret the world in a different way. So they may have their own, we all have a unique way of interpreting it, but they may be slightly different from the typical way. And if we understood that, then we would be more easily able to make accommodations coming from that place of understanding. And that is the objective of everything we do at Inclusive Duniya. It is not to help people gain PhDs in the subject, but it is to help educate and inform enough so that people can come at this issue and come at the people around them from a place of understanding, acceptance, and making space. So what we do to help sort of with this education is, one of the primary tools that we use is a comic. So we publish this comic on Instagram, and it's very categorically, it's a choice that we've made, that we will make it available freely. It is there for people to discover. There's you don't have to go and order it anywhere. There's no cost associated with it. And it is a resource that people can share freely because it's available to everyone. Through our comic character. So our comic is called Naina's Inclusive Duniya, and I'm really hoping that you will get off this call and promptly go and follow the comic. But what I wanted to do over the next 5-7 minutes is, using some of our characters, introduce some of the conditions. So Naina is a neurotypical girl who goes to an inclusive school, and she has a whole bunch of friends who live with different conditions, Down syndrome and intellectual disability and autism spectrum. And with these characters, we really use storytelling as a way to sort of help educate people and drive the social change. And with these characters, we actually want you to sort of understand a little bit about the lived experience of the disability itself, but also that people are a lot more than the disability. The people are a lot more than their condition, they're full individuals. So let's start with meeting Sunny. Sunny has Down syndrome. Who here knows what Down syndrome is? Oh. So someone said they have siblings. So Down syndrome is the most common chromosome-related genetic condition, which is caused by the presence of 3 copies of chromosome 21 instead of 2. So instead of 46 chromosomes, they have 47. When this happens, it causes cellular changes that could lead to health problems. So typically, there would be a mild intellectual disability. There might be, some changes in typical physical features. So, whether it's almond-shaped eyes or thicker tongue, or stockier arms, muscle hyptonia. So there's certain conditions that commonly sort of occur in individuals with Down syndrome. And there's certain health issues that need to be monitored through their life. So it is, but with Down syndrome, let's look at Sunny. Sunny is a painter who, so he spends his time painting. He loves his routines. He loves organizing spaces at home and in school. and he loves to party. Now, these are all traits that you'd see are quite common in individuals with Down syndrome, but who doesn't like to party over here? Like, I'm sure all of us are going to go to a party after this call gets over, right? It's Saturday night. Or, I'm sure there's like a lot of painters over here. I love a routine. I live in a very, very organized fashion. I am very particular about the routines that I follow. I have the same breakfast every morning. But, if we see that, we actually find that there's more in common that we have with Sunny than not. Let's meet Sujit Desai. Sujit Desai is a real-life individual. He lives with Down syndrome. He's a musician who plays as part of an orchestra, has mastered 7 instruments, received numerous awards, and through his work, he does his work for his joy, but he also uses it to send out a message to the world that with the right opportunities, given the right proper opportunities, individuals with disabilities can make it happen. And if you'd like, we'd be happy to share a short biography of Sujit that we've kind of covered. We've done a little profile on him. Vicky is a character who lives with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a group of motor developmental disorders that permanently affect muscle tone, body movement, posture, and coordination. In many cases, vision, hearing, speech, and sensation are also affected, and it can be accompanied by intellectual disability. So unlike Down syndrome, which typically is, here it may or may not. Vicky likes his cool gadgets. He loves laddus and snacks like a lot of us do. And he loves playing indoor games outside. So you'd see a lot of times in our stories, Vicky's the one, Vicky's always sitting by the laddus and he loves helping his friends. So with this, I think one thing worth noting for us is also that it's not just, when we are trying to educate people about the lived experience of disability and how we could be an ally, the help goes both ways. It's not just one way. RJ May is an actor who was part of the famous series Breaking Bad. Have any of you seen him acting? Yes, no? I'm going to assume that's all yeses. Yes. Who just says yes. So that's another person who, in a very public role, has succeeded and has thrived. And again, this is because he was given the opportunity. Samira is a character who's on the autism spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability that may or may not co-occur with intellectual disability. So you'd typically have an IQ range of below 70 or above 120. And there might be challenges communicating, interacting socially, or in the way they learn and experience. Now, this is something that manifests differently for different people. And as with a lot of other disabilities, it's not like this, one standard experience for everyone, but especially so in autism. So let's not actually that's one point that I wanted to underline over here. I hope that some of you will go through the comics and read some stories that feature Samira, but let's actually look at her. She uses soother called Cuddles because she has sensory needs. She also uses earmuffs and they say like she uses these because a lot of times things can become a little too much. So she can get overwhelmed by the sensory input that she's getting from the environment, which is an experience that often people with autism might have. Sounds can be too loud, perfumes and smells could be too strong, images could be too bright. So, people like dimmer lighting, and sometimes, the crowds could be too much. And I think knowing that there could be these needs allows us to make accommodations, but it also recognizing those needs also allows Samira to prepare for it by, taking her earmuffs or taking her soothing toy with her. So she plans and prepares for all trips outside her home, even to the mall. And as you can see, because she understands her needs and she accepts her needs, she's able to give herself what she needs, and people around her are able to accommodate for that as well. Elon Musk. Now, there are a lot of famous people that you would have heard of who are on the spectrum, but Elon Musk is one of those ones who's recently come out and identified as having Asperger's syndrome. Now, Now, when we talk about, this experience of neurodiversity, one of the things that we often say is that, if every individual is different and we are talking about, who's disabled and who's not, I think with autism, it becomes very clear, like you'd be like, oh, but you'd probably not use the term disability with someone like Elon Musk. But really, this is where we kind of, want to highlight the difference between disability and diversity and recognize that everything is a diversity. So people who are disabled because of an interaction between their inherent condition as well as the environment that may not be supporting their needs. So if you were to map everybody with their diverse needs on a bell curve, our systems, whether it's education systems or, employment or society, is built for what is the chunky middle. So anyone who's on the right-hand side of that chunky middle or the average gets termed a genius like Elon Musk, and anyone who is not able to cope up with the system and because they do not get the accommodations that they individually need, ends up getting the disability label. But really the point really worth noting over here is that it is a diversity, it is a bell curve, and all we need to do is understand how we can provide for the diversity of needs. And this is where our individual role comes up. Intellectual disability, Tanuj. Tanuj has intellectual disability. It is a condition that occurs with an IQ of less than 70. Also involves restrictions in 2 or more adaptive areas, which is skills that are needed to live, work, and play in communities, such as communication or self-care. And it is something that needs to become apparent through the developmental years, so before the age of 18. So typically you'd know through the early years if somebody has an intellectual disability or not. So our Tanuj here is one of my favorite characters. He's inspired by my own brother. He plays chess, loves the dog, loves his family and friends, and he's always cheering people on, even when the world calls him different. We use the example of Da Vinci over here, disability, but part of the reason for this was that we actually could not find somebody who was a recognizable name who had ID as such, not from the performing arts or otherwise. And this is something that I really wish changes over the next few years, that more people are able to thrive and come forward and shine and be in the spotlight. So I'm going to take a moment to pause here. And before we get into talking about volunteering, may I ask if anyone has any comments, any questions, any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Would love for a few questions to come up at this point. Lasya has a question, I'm assuming. Please go ahead.
Hey, hi, this is Lasya here.
Hi, Lasya.
I just have a question. Well, I have seen kids with autism, and there is a small school nearby which is recently shut down because of COVID. I have been there once to look how they are and try to help them, but I think it requires a lot of emotional strength to help them out. Because after looking at children with such a disability, and it feels really bad because at the age where they have to be free, they are having some kind of disability. So I need a small suggestion how to gain the strength to help them.
And how do you help them? Like when you go down to the school, do you volunteer your time? What do you do?
I tried to do it, but I think I was depressed because it's really hurting to see kids suffering a lot. So I want to work and I would like to gain some tips from you.
Okay. So one thing I would actually say is that, you're possibly feeling depressed because, or sad because, you feel like they're probably not able to live a full life. And the first thing that I'd say, because this is a conversation about volunteering, and this is a conversation about involving more of you all in bringing about a positive change, is how about you channel that energy into saying, if you feel something is not quite right for how, what opportunities they have, what context that they're living in, how could you do your bit to change it? So to be able to do something on a sustained basis, and to not feel depressed or not feel emotionally drawn down, one, you have to be able to look at something objectively and factually. And second, you have to be able to find a concrete way in which you can contribute towards that change. And third, even like, I don't know, I don't know the context of the school, or what sort of individuals come there, or what sort of support they have, but I also do hope that there is somebody who is there to inform you on what the needs of the individuals are, and how you could interact with them in a meaningful way. And maybe this is something we could talk about offline, the specifics of this thing, but I think the general response would be, if anyone feels drawn down, first of all, is don't look at the situation from a place of pity. We all have our positives, and we all have our negatives. We all have our gifts, and we all have our challenges, and we all have our ability to contribute to someone else's life. So for example, if I weren't wearing my glasses, I wouldn't actually be able to see anything or do anything, but nobody would typically feel sorry for me because I have to wear my glasses, because it is normalized and it is common, and there are ways for me to bridge that access gap. So one way we can help improve the condition for these individuals, so that it doesn't impact you, but it also helps improve their life, is to build those bridges for them, to help build those bridges in whatever shape form, to help build their capacity to act and be included. And sorry, I feel like I've jumped into responding to the question before asking why you feel bad. I feel like I don't have enough context on that. Do you want to, maybe take 30 seconds to share that? Where's Lasya? Did we lose Lasya? Ah, we lost Lasya. Pooja, would you want to add anything to this? So Pooja is signal issues. So Pooja has joined me. She is a sibling advocate as well, and she volunteers with us. And Pooja, if you had anything to share, please do. Unmute yourself and to share.
Hi Pooja. Hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to say, we'll start with. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I'll give my introduction. So my name is Pooja Kaushik, and yes, I am a sibling to a special child. I have a brother who is like 10 years younger to me, and currently I'm staying far away from him. But yes, in my life, if I say, uh, my journey as a sibling is more of learning, and learning about accepting that there is a issue, or there is sorry there is no issue. Yes, sorry. So what Lasya said, I want to say,
Could you speak a little louder, Pooja? It's a little faint.
I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm wearing a earphone, so that's why. Am I audible right now? Ha. So what Lasya said, I want to add to that. Lasya, actually, what we are doing is, in this volunteering, what we have been doing and what we are doing is about. It's not about going on the ground and giving them something. It's more about changing the mentality around disability. So if anybody is feeling sorry by seeing them, we don't want them to feel sorry by seeing anyone who is disabled. We want them to feel more empathetic, not pity. So that's what we are doing, and the whole agenda of this volunteering is this. The whole agenda, we have been working, Pooja is working, Vinayak is working, and everybody around us is working, is about creating a different mindset around disability. So that's why, so when you want to help them now, you have to help yourself, working on your mindset, that no, disability is not a curse. Next, anybody near you should not take it as a curse. Secondly, you have to reciprocate right language around disability, right mindset around disability. If us, anyone, me or anybody, will accept disability as part of our society, I think there's where the change comes. So I think,
So let's talk about volunteering. Like let's go on and talk about volunteering, and maybe we can come back to this point. Yeah.
okay, so yes, let's,
Thank you so much for adding that context as well, Pooja.
yes, just wanted to say, okay, so then I was talking about,
So
can I get back to you in 2 minutes if it's okay?
we'll come back to you.
Yes.
We'll just come back to you in a bit, Pooja. So one question, Lasya, I mean, you've set the context for this. So I would have started by asking, if anyone here is wondering why they should be caring about this issue. And I think because a lot of you have signed up on your own, it is something that you're at least curious about, if not personally impacted by. But for one reason I'm encouraged is that you all support social causes and equity in your own way as volunteers. I do want to add the neurodiversity is increasing, with some estimating that every 1 in 7 people will have a neurodiversity. So even with this, you may be meeting people who have higher support needs, who are completely excluded, but you'd be surprised how many people amongst our midst would identify as neurodivergent and could have done with more accommodations. Now, the second point is, with the right support at the right time, majority of the neurodivergent individuals can lead a pretty full and fulfilling life. And this kind of goes back to what Lasya was sharing, like if you're able to contribute, are you with the empathy that you're bringing to the issue, could you educate and inform yourself enough to be able to extend that support, making sure that it is the right kind of support that supports an individual and their individual needs, and it is offered at the right time. So that also requires a lot of awareness building. There is so much focus on making inclusion mainstream, and the truth is it couldn't be far from reality. So all of us, while there is a school that Lasya is going to, when we go to a regular school, we don't actually, despite having 3 separate pieces of legislation that actually require children to be in school, children of all abilities to be in a school, we don't actually see them in an inclusive setup. So that kind of through the life stages. So we have a role to play in making sure that right at the outset, the right support is provided, they're able to be integrated and included into the mainstream through education, and that kind of continues and doesn't get divergent. So let's put some numbers and concreteness around this. Let me just check messages. There's 5 messages that are in. So the 35 million, there aren't any good solid numbers around the needs of individuals in this sector, but we've triangulated some numbers, and we believe that 35 million individuals who live with an IDD. Like I said, an IDD, intellectual and developmental disability, it needs to manifest in developmental years and it impacts the cognitive functioning and social adaptive behaviors. Right support, right time means that if they can lead an independent and typical adult life, but what blocks it is lack of awareness and lack of sensitization, which is what we've been talking about for the last 5-7 minutes. That if there isn't enough awareness about what their needs might be and how they could be provided for, and if there isn't enough sensitization as to how they could be included in society and how those two could integrate, it leads to a lack of inclusion. And this is the problem that we're looking to solve for. As an organization, we have 3 different strands that we work with, but today we're talking about Inclusive Duniya very specifically, which is our volunteer-led program. I'm going to take a minute to awareness and allyship for the cause, and we do this in 3 ways. So we've talked about the comic, which is available on Instagram, and this really is the heart of the program. It showcases what good looks like. So when we first did our first awareness campaign, it was sharing factoids, it was sharing personal stories. But a lot of people we interacted with would say, but we don't actually know what that really means. So you've said, somebody has, it impacts their social adaptive behaviors. What does that really mean? Or they have a sensory overload. What does that really mean? So we use these stories and we use our characters with very, beautiful artwork to illustrate what the lived experience is. But we also then put an actionable thing. Like, so people would also say, "Main kya kar sakta hu?" So with every story, we also try to respond to that question, what could you be doing as an ally in small everyday ways? And we partnered with parents, we partnered with siblings, we partnered with service providers in the sector. So we hope that, we are becoming the voice of the community. The second thing we do is we run inclusive Duniya circles, and this is our primary activity with volunteers. We take the content that we've developed and some other content freely available on the internet. We've constructed a 60 to 75-minute conversation. So we've designed this as a loosely structured conversation. The first is to broaden. The second is to talk construction of disability, that, it is not just a condition, but it is also the environment. And it is, if we were able to create an enabling environment, it would sort of reduce the disability experience for an individual. It would enable them to live a pretty full life. And then the third is to get people, once we've kind of landed those 2 points, to get individuals to think about what their role could be in their personal lives to be an ally. And we run these conversations with the help of trained volunteers such as yourselves. And we get them to host these conversations with preteens and teens with the aim of stimulating thoughts and questions and hopefully seeding an inclusivity mindset. And then the third thing that we do is we run projects where we do knowledge partnership, capacity building support. So an example would be something like this, where we design and adapt the content for specific purposes or audiences, and we create specific purposes campaigns. So it's something that, one of the things that we have coming up between March 21st, which is the World Down Syndrome Day, and April 2nd, which is the Autism Awareness Day, is a 2-week-long campaign where we're partnering with a lot of individuals and a lot of volunteers to host something within their, immediate context in their community to create a more inclusive world. So, we call it inclusive Duniya for a reason. So this is Pooja's inclusive Duniya, this work that we do. We have Vinayak working on this, and in that way, he contributes to building a more inclusive Duniya himself. And I'd really love to see what Lasya's inclusive Duniya looks like. And what you'd like to do to contribute towards that. Over the last 12 to 18 months, we've engaged 400,000 individuals digitally and through our sessions. So a lot of the pictures that you see over here show the different contexts in which our sessions happen. So they've happened in communities, they've happened in people's community centers, people's homes, online, in schools and colleges, and also led by students. So often we have volunteers who are leading this with children, but then we've also had people who attended our sessions who step forward to say, we'd like to take this work forward. And then it becomes, their way of creating an inclusive world. And that chain, hopefully that chain grows over the years as well. So question for you all: how can we be an equal rights ally to our friends with diverse abilities? How do you think this would work in your context? Or shall we start with the definition of what an ally is? Maybe let's start with that. So an ally is a supporter, an associate, colleague, or partner who's a member of another community, has a higher degree of freedoms, and who uses their position of comparative privilege to amplify what change. They're to rise up on their own if given the opportunity. So they're also there creating the opportunity for them, not kind of coming in with the savior syndrome. In fact, we did a similar session earlier this morning with a group of college students, from Delhi University. And one of them, when I asked, could you think of an example of allyship, talked about how the US is supporting Ukraine. And, often when we talk about allyship, we do, when I ask this question, we get responses saying, talking about LGBT allies or, gender allies, but it was the first time somebody actually talked about a political ally, which was a very, very interesting response for me. Are there any examples that you'd like to share? I was telling Gautam I can be a bad teacher and start picking on people to give answers. So, okay. So one quick checklist on how to be an ally. There are 4 things that you can do. You can build your own awareness and you can spread awareness. So talk about the issue in your circles. You can actively cultivate commit to intentionally including one. Those would be brilliant ways of interacting. Ask if accommodations are needed. So interact with individuals directly. Make sure that it's a 2-way process, and this is something, through the presentation, we've kept highlighting that, it has to be a 2-way process. It has to be a respectful process where you see the need, you recognize the need, but it is the agency and the choice of the individual as to how they want accommodations to be made or how they want their needs to be supported. And then finally become a direct ally. You turn up to support in events, holding circles and actively kind of advocating for the cause. But whatever you do, I hope that at some point later this evening you will be thinking about how you could make your world more inclusive. Because whether we know it or not, like, we've all experienced non-inclusion. We may not have experienced neurodiversity, or we may have seen it secondhand, may not have seen it secondhand, but we've all experienced non-inclusion, and it is a sentiment that we recognize, and we all know that it feels better to be included. Yeah. Cool. So how about this? Let's have a conversation about how we could cultivate our own inclusive Duniya in small. Pooja Kaushik, who is a sibling advocate, who's been doing this for way longer than I have been as an individual, but who, to our good fortune, decided to join forces with us and actively champions the cause of inclusive Duniya and supports it. So I'd like for her to share her journey, as well as some ideas that she's been thinking about and leading on for our upcoming March campaign. Pooja?
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for giving chance, and sorry for my previous glitch. Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share about the journey with Sarvodaya. So as Pooja said, I have been doing this kind of advocacy through my individual platforms or things like that. So we were just discussing this in the morning itself, like how it came into picture. So since childhood, we have whatever we see in the society, we come with a background that, okay, so disability is not acceptable, and people around us show some kind of sympathy or things like that. So we accepted disability at home, but in the social background, or when you say in the society, I I wasn't confident about to talk about my brother. So because it took me like uh, 7 to 8 years to talk about him in the society, like in my school, in my college, with any of random people when they ask about what does your sibling do. It took me time because I was growing with this society itself. But when I started accepting it, there is no turn back. So when I started accepting it, I started talking about it. I started talking about on my personal social media platform. I started talking about the challenges we face, as my brother is a cerebral palsy child. So what challenges a CP child faces, what challenges being from a family of a CP child, how we tackle those challenges. I used to talk about the good things of having him in our life, not just the bad things which everybody sees. So what happened is, in that process, uh, I have like I started researching a lot about how movies represent disability, how media represent, because I'm from media background. So I started researching over how media represent disability, because that plays a major role in our mindset. Obviously, that creates our mindset. How we learn a lot about disability through movies or through any of the media representation. So what I find out ki, when there is a victory with a disability, we celebrate that. When there is a pity story, we celebrate that. But when there is a normal life with disability, we don't talk about it. We don't even think of featuring it. Then I met Pooja through my social media itself. And I like the idea of educating people, not just talking about it, but educating them. And I think the pattern in which we are working in Inclusive Dunya is, is a wonderful pattern. It's a chain. Like, I come from a community, Pooja comes from a community, Vinayak comes from a community, and we are talking to 15 people. Maybe they are not from the community. So if 15 people are getting educated, I think everyone will educate some other 15 or 20 people. So that's the chain which we are building. And I love the idea of Inclusive Dunya, how the main thing was, I was doing the awareness part, but what Sarvodaya is doing is the education part. We are educating. We are not just making aware about what is disability, but we are educating people about how to use disability language, what not to do, what to do. Also, if even if you belong to the community or you don't belong to the community. So basically, the vision is to make people act on this, on awareness of disability and education of disability, even though you are not connected anywhere through the community. I have a reason, Pooja has a reason, because we have lived our life being connected to disability. But I don't think somebody else has a reason, but still they find a vision to work with us. That's the reason we are doing this volunteering program, and that's the reason I love to be connected with Inclusive Dunya. And I've taken 3 sessions for Inclusive Dunya, and it was amazing to interact with kids of like 6 to 12 years. And the way, I think kids are, we know that kids have a very good learning capability, and the way the kids respond and the way those sessions are so interactive. And I think we are building a good future through Inclusive Dunya, because those kids will be the one who will practice inclusion in their future. Those kids are the one who will not question mark when they see anyone with a disability. They will be like, they will become the ally of other kids with disability, right? Because we are building the future. We are teaching the kids, and we are educating them around disability, which is actually, they have a big gap. they अभी वो बड़े हो रहे हैं, हम लोग बड़े हो चुके हैं, so we have filled the gap with whatever things we have learned from our families and society. But they have a gap, and they are like coming there. So we are filling the gap with good things. वहाँ बुरी चीज को जाने ही नहीं दे रहे. We are filling it already with good things. So that's the reason I want, if anyone of you would love to volunteer it, and I think you're giving back to society, to yourself also, not just to the society, but to yourself also. And I would love to see more people doing the Inclusive Dunya circles, volunteering that. And personally, I feel you would love to interact with the kids, even though you're not connected with the cause or anything. I think that would help you personally. And when you will switch off your Zoom, or you'll come back with any sessions you have taken offline, you will feel very satisfied. I, I can bet that you will feel very satisfied and very positive after doing this. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your experience. Thank you for the work that you do and for all the kind words that you shared right now, Pooja. Really appreciate it. So a couple of points that I'd like to maybe underline or add to where to Pooja's experience sharing. So one is, Pooja mentioned that, she has a reason and I have a reason because we're siblings. But actually, what makes me really optimistic and why I genuinely believe that this volunteering model will work is that we have a call full of people over here who are socially conscious, who contribute towards, building a more positive future. And we are introducing a cause that hopefully resonates with you. So, when I say there are 35 million individuals who live with an IDD in India, 35 million is more than the population of most countries. It's more than the population of Sri Lanka. It's in the first, top 35, 40 countries ka population in the world. When I say 1 in every 7 people have a neurodivergence, whether it is diagnosed, whether they recognize it themselves or not, because, a lot of people from our generation and maybe the next generation have gone through without an active diagnosis of their neurodivergence. Whether it is diagnosed or not, every 7th individual in the world is an Indian, right? So imagine, billions of people who actually live with some kind of a neurodivergence. So that's a fairly high number, and for them to be able to say that, we create an environment where they can thrive and, they can play to their strengths is a future that would be beneficial for all of us, not just for them, I think for all of us. So that's one. Yeah, and second is the conversations with the children, so there is, and I'm going to pull up my slide over here. So our primary way of reaching out is via what we call a reading circle, an inclusive Duniya reading circle. But we also recognize that not everyone would actually have the time. So why we use volunteering model? One, because I feel like I said, people options that they can contribute towards. But the second is also that one way to learn about an issue, if you're not directly impacted by it, is if you have some kind of an experience and if you can make it easy enough for people to interact with the issue or do something about it. So along with the reading circle, to try and simplify what people can do, we've created a whole bunch of other opportunities that we've supported with other individuals. So where people have stepped forward and they've said they would like to contribute. They can't host a reading circle, but they'd like to contribute in another way. We've said, okay, something as simple as adding an email signature to your official email, or maybe host a party with a purpose or organize an event where you actually take 10 minutes to talk about the cause. Say you can contribute to the cause and be an ally by either contributing money, contributing your time, or connections and resources. Oh, sorry, that's a dog walker. Just give me a second. Apologies, I thought we would be done by now. So what I was saying was that, besides the reading circle, which is our core volunteering opportunity, there's a whole bunch of other things that we do as well. And as an example, for the campaign that's coming up between March 21st and April 2nd, we have Pooja herself kind of leading a video campaign with doing Instagram reels, and maybe she can share a little bit about that later, and we can share a sample reel with you and with the people who've signed up for the group for the session over here. But there are multiple ways of engaging. What we do is we take people on a volunteer on a journey where for the first 3 steps, we help them explore what would be a suitable opportunity for them. Select that, see if there is a fit, onboard them on ableism 101, language 101, so there are a lot of people who feel a certain discomfort talking about disability, like disability bolna hai ki special needs bolna hai, main jaake help kaise karu? Yeah, like what Lasya shared, it's a very common experience that, there is a bit of awkwardness, there is a bit of discomfort engaging with the issue. So we help people sort of get comfortable with all of those things, with what might be, the politically correct, the appropriate, sensitive way of dealing with the issue. And then obviously they kind of go live and deliver the opportunity. We invest the time in all of this upskilling. So across all opportunities, the base of the pyramid where, there's exploration and onboarding takes between 2 to 3 hours where we orient you on the issue. We have a lot of resources and I will share those resources with you in a minute. And then there's some opportunity specific training. And for each of these opportunities, we have a clearly defined, what preparation is required, what support and training would we provide, and what we expect from you after you've done the sessions, after we've kind of gone through this journey. What do we expect from you and what sort of a time commitment is there? So across all of these opportunities, we have all of this identified, and it's something, again, for those of you who are interested, we can share a bit more. But right now, what I might like to share some of the resources that we have that can be accessed by all of you, if you would want to deep dive into the issue. And I'm hoping after this, we could have a little bit of a conversation about this. So for anyone who's joining us, we provide some resources on, how to be an ally, what is intellectual disability, ableisms, do's and don'ts. So, how do you kind of tackle that? What are the nuances of dealing with something like this? Language do's and don'ts. Oops. Not the most tech savvy person here.
Pooja, I think we'll be also able to share, if you can share that link with us, we will also be able to share it with all the participants.
We will definitely share all of these resources with you after that, and you could share it with the participants, but I'm just doing a quick walkthrough. I just don't know how to hide my toolbar. There you are. So on our Instagram, if you go on language 101, which in a fairly simple light touch way actually shows what you could or could not be doing. And if you went to our website, there is a more detailed pack that sits behind it. So you could look at this detailed pack and you'd see for, there are like, long form articles that talk about various disabilities, ADHD kya hota hai, autism kya hota hai. You can look at all of this through our website. I will share the links with Gautam and team. Ableism. So what does ableism mean? How do you become more cognizant of the fact that, you may be ableistic, so you may think that you're helping, but, how do you recognize where you might be being ableistic or not? How do you address that? What should you be doing? So all of these are resources that are freely available on our website and otherwise, and we will share the links to this. So I'll pause now and maybe open it up to Gautam, you and the team and everyone, the attendees over here. Do you have any questions on volunteering, why we use volunteering as a model, or how you could volunteer with us, or neurodiversity as a domain as well?
We'll give everyone a minute to just think, and either if you have technical issues, you can drop your questions on the chat box as well.
Were there any questions that came in advance of the session, Gautam, that we can address while we're waiting?
Sure, there are a couple. I can read them out for you if that works. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, one of the questions that had previously come was, and I quote, I am at a loss of words and ability when the low class / kids on streets use words like pagal or someone with disability. How would you change their mindset, or how would you approach them correctly without getting angry? Should I repeat?
No. No, I hope everyone got the question. And this is something that doesn't happen just on the streets. So the question was, how do you respond if someone is using slur words like pagal or retard or mental? How do you address slur words? It is something that happens fairly commonly. Anything that doesn't conform in our society to a particular model of what ideal looks like gets kind of bracketed as pagal. It's probably the most diverse use of the word over here, but the way to address that is to step in respectfully, and so if it is being targeted at somebody who might have an intellectual disability, then it is likely intentional. It is not something that's kind of said jokingly, and the way to sort of address that is to share a little bit more context as to why someone may not be pagal. Do it respectfully. Know that if you're informing and educating the other person, hopefully they will change. Talk about why this might be respectful. Often of when they may have been hurt or when they may have been teased or bullied, then it helps them kind of build more of an empathy for it. And that the way is to share information and be respectful of the context from where they're coming from, and check them. And often you'll also find that a lot of people, so using a slur word is definitely offensive, but often people also use language without meaning to be offensive, and that can be seen as offensive by the receiving party, but it is not intended as offensive by the person who's using it. So again, it is a similar approach that you step in, educate, inform, and do it kindly. And if you look through the language do's and don'ts and ableism do's and don'ts resources on our website, there are more tips on how to do it. Yeah.
Thanks, Pooja.
So what? Sorry, go on.
No, please.
What I was going to add was that very often, when we're having the conversations that we have with Inclusive Duniya circles, very often situations like this come up. Somebody will say, the issue also becomes diversity specific conversation. It ends up becoming a broader issue as well, that what if I'm an ally to somebody from on the LGBT spectrum or who's queer, and I get left out, and how should I deal with it? Or this is something that I've experienced. I've been called a fatso. And all of these really are experiences, when I say that help people relate to the non-inclusion or their personal experience of being at the receiving end of slurs like that, you'd find that there are enough examples. So when people are able to connect it to their experience when they have been left out, as well as when they've done something to invite someone in or been invited in, they tend to be able to sort of relate to it better. And that's why we promote the use of these conversations, because conversations get a lot of these nuances out, and we provide tips on how to handle some of these issues through our training materials as well. In fact, go on.
Wonderful. So Pooja, we have a question from Nipun, who is one of our volunteers from Ahmedabad. Nipun is very interested in the cause, and he's looking to explore how he can volunteer for the cause in his city. Is there any thought that you have where, or a module that you think we can follow as an organization and be a part of this campaign?
Absolutely. And in fact, this upcoming campaign is one, like, because there is a big push towards kind of getting the word out. It is definitely an opportunity to engage. So first of all, if you could put Nipun in touch with us, Vinayak, if you could share the contact details. So you can get in touch with us, and through that volunteer journey that we shared, we can help you explore, what might be the appropriate way for you and your team to take up the cause in Ahmedabad. And I'm assuming, like, it's you and your team picking up the cause, and how you could do local events that are relevant to your context that that work for you. So, there are the central formats that we have and we support, but we also partner with groups to figure out what works for them. For example, when Lasya shared, she goes to the school, if the school needs additional support, or if she would like to kind of design a mini project then on educating, informing in the community around there, then that is something that we can help with. So similarly, Nipun is not on I think he must be on YouTube on watching the live, but we could try and understand what you believe are the contextual needs in Ahmedabad, and we can also design something specific for Ahmedabad, but definitely help you run the inclusive Duniya circles, and is, like I said, she's running a video campaign for the 2-week campaign that's coming up in March. And that is something that you could participate with. So that is for digital awareness more than local awareness. But that is an example of something where someone's taken initiative and done something where they feel they could contribute.
Understood. There is a part 2 to that question as well.
Go on.
So Nipun's question was, how do you ideally find volunteers to bring on board to work on a cause like this? Because obviously that you need to have a certain level of understanding to be able to make someone else on board as well, right? So what would be ideal, or you can maybe even talk in your perspective, when you started off, what were some ways what were some things you looked at to bring on board some volunteers?
Yeah. So when we started our journey, Nipun and VFI team, we basically started, it kind of organically, one thing grew out of the next. So we started putting out the comic, and when we started putting out the comic, people from within the community started stepping forward, parents, mostly moms and siblings, started stepping forward and saying, we like the tone of what you do, and could we use the material that you have to build awareness? And that prompted us to start designing these sessions where we could host conversations with children in support of the requests that we were getting, that, could they use? So instead of saying, "Haan, theek hai, use kar lo," we actually designed these session scripts, and we designed the training materials that they could be using so that it's a standardized experience and an efficacious experience. So coming out of that, so we do get volunteers from within the disability community who are already advocating, like Pooja, who's here. The second thing was, since we had this design, we started reaching out to volunteers online, and through these online platforms that you might be very familiar with, and through schools and colleges. And the intent there is that, we want to engage people who are from outside the community. And this is something that I say often in a lot of forums, that, when we're fighting for Dalit rights, it's not the Dalits only who show up and stand up for it. Or, when we're fighting for this farmer protest, it's not just the farmers who showed up to protest. But when we fight for neurodiversity, the only allies we see showing up are allies from within the community who are directly impacted, who are people who live with neurodiversity or their first line of caregivers. And this is what we want to change. So when we go out and we speak to new volunteers, start being exposed to the issue, point number one we find when we sort of have a similar conversation is that by the end of the conversation, someone's always said, and which is why I started with the question as well, they've kind of come up with, yeah, my neighbor when I was 7 years old probably had some disability, or I went to school with somebody who had, Down syndrome, or, so people actually start remembering connections from their own life, and suddenly there is a connection to the cause as well. Because, if they've experienced that somebody's fallen off they were with them and then they've kind of fallen off the mainstream, or they did not have access to the same opportunities, or they live very different lives to the extent that they may not have remembered in the first go, that works really well. The second is a lot of people who would voluntarily show up for a session like this. So if you go to a college and we say we're doing a sensitization session or a volunteer recruitment session, we find that people who want to bring about positive change and who want to use their time and energies and effort to bring about that positive change show up. So they're already somewhere sensitized, and it's only about kind of equipping them with the right knowledge and helping shape their perspective on the issue, which we do using the resources that we've created, and also sometimes, if needed, by getting them to shadow other volunteers. So those are things that we have found work. Does that?
Wonderful. Perfect. I hope this session also brings out a few people who are more aware of the cause currently, and would be interested in taking forward campaigns and support you and the organization, and like making a feasible impact moving forward. Pooja, I think we are a little over time.
A little.
A little, but
Yeah.
I'm sure, I mean, I didn't notice it listening to you and all the wonderful insights that came out of this session. And I hope it's the same for the others as well. Seeing that there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up this session with the hopes that we've been able to impart some valuable information to all those folks who joined. It definitely was very insightful for me. And so thank you so much for taking the time, putting in the effort to put together this session. And I'm pretty sure we'll be requesting more of these sessions in the future so that we can reach out to a larger crowd.
We would be very happy. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to talk to more people about the cause. And I'm really hoping that, we'd have some interest coming in. We are here, both me, Vinayak, Pooja, we're all here to share more information, resources, whatever help you need. We'd love if you participated in the March campaign that's coming up. And even after, we do this all year round. So we'd be very happy to support that, and very happy to come back for any follow-on sessions, in-depth sessions, follow-on similar sessions, or in-depth sessions, whatever you like. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gautam and team, for giving this platform.
Absolutely wonderful. And all the resources, like I said earlier, whatever you would like us to share with all the participants, and even the folks who could not join us today who had signed up, would be very happy to do that. So do share it with us, and we are on board as one of the allies moving forward as well. So would love to support in whatever.
VFIP inclusive, Duniya. Thank you so much.
Thanks once again, Pooja and team, for joining us, and hoping to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.